Hi, I'm Allie, a test prep tutor and strategist at Geek. Today, we're going to cover everything you need to know about colons for the ACT and SAT. There are two types of colons that you need to know. The first are colons that introduce a list, and the second are colons that are used to introduce an idea. Let's take a look at the first one. Colons that introduce a list. 3 virtues seem indispensable for success in this world: honesty, compassion, and patience. All right, now we know this is a list, right? We see a list of 3 things: honesty, compassion, and patience, and we have a colon right before that list. So this is telling the reader, hey, we're about to share with you a list of things. It could be ideas, places, people, things, whatever. It's a list. And the nice thing about using a colon in this way is sometimes it can really shorten the sentence for us. And this is really important on the SAT and ACT because they're focusing on being succinct. You want to pick the simplest answer possible. Even if 2 are grammatically correct, you want to pick the one that is saying the same thing in a shorter, more succinct way. And so we could say there are 3 virtues that seem indispensable for success in this world, and they are honesty, compassion, and patience. We're saying the same thing ultimately, but that's a lot longer of a sentence, whereas this use of a colon simplifies it for us. So this is not only grammatically correct, it's actually a really nice way to simplify our sentence. Colons that introduce an idea. The message from the voters was clear. If he didn't take the problem seriously, his days in office were numbered. All right, very different use of a colon, right? We don't have a list anymore, we have an idea, which is a little bit vague, I know. But you can think of this as a way to signal to the reader, hey, I'm telling you that I'm about to tell you something. And that's what we're saying here. So we're saying that there's a message. So there's a message, and what is that message? Well, the message is, if he didn't take the problem seriously, his days in office were numbered. Okay, so we're telling the reader, without telling them directly, that we're about to tell them what the message is. And again, similar to the list, it's a way for us to sort of simplify things. Instead of saying the message from the voters was clear, and the message was, if he didn't take the problem seriously, his days in office were numbered, we can kind of cut out a few of those words and simply use a colon to signal this to the reader and then just share what the message is. So this one's a little bit trickier to identify. But what you want to focus on is this idea of introductions, right? So colons are always going to be introducing something, whether that's a list or an idea. If you see a colon on the test, you want to start thinking about that concept of, is it introducing something or not? Let's take a closer look at how colons can be used to introduce a list and a few things to keep in mind for the test. So we talked about this idea of a colon being used to even simplify a sentence for us, to make it a little bit shorter. But sometimes when we use a colon, it actually does the opposite thing. It makes things more convoluted or complicated. And that's what you want to look out for on the test. So when you see a colon, you want to ask yourself, can the colon easily be removed? Okay. If a colon can easily be removed, or if the sentence would get shorter if the colon were removed, we probably don't need the colon. Okay, let's look at an example. My 3 favorite fruits are as follows: apples, oranges, and bananas. Okay, so we have a list, right? Great. We have a colon. Cool. This seems like a really good candidate for a colon because we have a list. We want to be really, really careful here. This is where it gets tricky on the test because we want to ask ourselves, can this colon here be removed? Could we say, my 3 favorite fruits are as follows: apples, oranges, and bananas? Not really. Right? We can't just really remove that colon, like something seems a little bit off. But what if we just rephrase the sentence a little bit? Is there a better way to say this? Maybe we could say, my 3 favorite fruits are apples, oranges, and bananas. So we can actually eliminate 2 words and the colon, and we are saying the exact same thing. So if that were an option on the test, that would be our answer. We don't want to use a colon when it's not necessary. So don't force yourself to use a colon just because you have a list. You want to make sure it's the right choice and it's actually helping you make your sentences more simple and not just adding unnecessary words or punctuation. Let's try a few more practice problems. The biggest hurdles seem to be figuring out the scope, finding the right people, and securing funding. What do we think about this one? Well, we have a list, right? We actually have a bit of a more complex list. It's not just a list of words. We have sort of compound items, figuring out the scope, finding the right people, and securing funding. Okay, perfect. So we have a colon. We need to ask ourselves, can we remove this colon? The biggest hurdle seems to be figuring out the scope, finding the right people, and securing funding. Yeah, we can actually just remove that colon and we have a great sentence. We don't need the colon here. And so that would be the answer here. We just want to take out this colon. The gift was perfect. It was unexpected, thoughtful, and creative. All right, again, we have a list. Unexpected, thoughtful, creative. Okay, so this is a bit of an interesting one. We have a colon, but we also kind of have two sentences, right? So we have the gift was perfect. That's like what I'm going to call sentence 1 or complete thought number 1. And then we have it was unexpected, thoughtful, and creative. That's complete thought number 2. So what is this colon even doing? It's kind of just in the middle of two complete thoughts, right? So this is something also to look out for. A little bit of a hint is that this will be better if we have a semicolon. I'm not going to cover semicolons in this video, but I'll link to our video on semicolons. But we don't want to use a colon when it's not necessary or when there would be a better punctuation to use. So the gift was perfect. We could say a period, or we could put a semicolon. It was unexpected, thoughtful, and creative. Or we could say the gift was perfect, unexpected, thoughtful, and creative. It depends on kind of the meaning and what you're trying to get across, but there might be some different ways to communicate the same idea. The main idea here is when you see a colon in any answer choice on the test, you want to start to think about, is this colon being used to introduce an idea or to introduce a list? If neither, we definitely want to be questioning whether we need that colon or not. If it is falling into one of those categories, we want to make sure that it's the right choice, that it's actually helping to simplify our writing and it's not making it more complicated. If we can take out that colon or if we could replace it with something else, then we want to consider that as an option and always focus on the simplest writing you can possibly choose on the test. We don't want any extra words, any extra punctuation. And that tends to be a big part of where colons show up on the SAT or ACT. So focus on that. Focus on making your sentences as clear and succinct as possible. Thanks so much for joining me. If you're looking for more SAT and ACT test prep content, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and you can also find us at testgeek.com/blog.